The moment Adrian Vale opened his eyes, he realized two horrifying things at once. He was alive again, and the man holding a sword to his throat was the Crown Prince he was destined to betray. Before the story begins, don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment if you enjoy emotional BL stories full of tension, royalty, betrayal, and forbidden love. Your support helps more stories like this continue. Now, let's begin. Part 1. Adrian did not remember dying peacefully. He remembered rain. Cold rain. He remembered running through a ruined palace garden with blood on his hands that was not his own. He remembered the sound of knights shouting behind him, the silver crest of the royal family flashing through the storm, and one voice calling his name like it was both a curse and a prayer. Adrian. Then the blade. Then darkness. And now, he was staring up at a painted ceiling covered in golden angels, lying in a bed softer than clouds, wearing a silk nightshirt that definitely did not belong to the tiny rented apartment he had fallen asleep in. His heart slammed against his ribs. "No," he whispered. The word came out hoarse, unfamiliar, elegant. He sat up too quickly. Pain shot through his skull, and memories burst open inside him like shattered glass. Adrian Vale. Second son of Duke Vale. A minor villain in the tragic romance novel The Crown Prince's Thorn. Beautiful. Useless. Arrogant. Disposable. A character who existed only to be used by greater villains, framed for treason, and executed before the real story even reached its climax. Adrian clutched his chest. He remembered reading the novel in his past life, laughing bitterly at how pathetic Adrian Vale had been. A spoiled noble who tried to win power by clinging to the wrong people. A fool who insulted the crown prince, betrayed his own family, and died as a convenient scapegoat. And now he was him. Not just reborn into the story. Reincarnated as the disposable villain. A knock came at the door. "My lord," a servant called softly. "Are you awake? His Highness has arrived." Adrian froze. His Highness? No. Not already. The door opened before he could answer. A young man stepped into the room, and the air changed instantly. Crown Prince Lucien Arkwright. The male lead of the novel. The future emperor. The man Adrian was supposed to hate. He was even more devastating than the book had described. Tall, dressed in a black military coat trimmed with silver, his dark hair slightly damp from morning mist. His face was calm, almost cold, but his eyes, deep blue, sharp, unreadable, locked onto Adrian with such intensity that Adrian forgot how to breathe. Behind him stood two royal guards. And in Lucien's hand was a sword. Adrian's body remembered fear before his mind did. Lucien crossed the room slowly. "My Lord Vale," he said, voice low. "You fainted at the banquet last night." Adrian swallowed. Banquet? Then another memory hit. The royal engagement celebration. In the novel, this was the night Adrian publicly insulted the crown prince and poured wine on the heroine's dress. It was the moment everyone began to despise him. But something was wrong. The original Adrian was supposed to wake up the next morning in his own mansion, furious and humiliated. Not in the palace. Not with the crown prince standing beside his bed. Lucien stopped close enough that Adrian could see the faint scar near his jaw. A scar that, according to the novel, he received in a battlefield massacre 3 years later. 3 years later. Why did he already have it? Adrian's stomach twisted. This story was not following the book perfectly. Lucien lifted the sword. Adrian's breath caught as the cold edge touched the side of his throat. The servants gasped. "My lord," Lucien said quietly, "do you know why I brought you here?" Adrian forced himself not to tremble. Because in the novel, Lucien hated Adrian. Everyone did. Adrian Vale was a thorn in his side. A nuisance. A villain. A man who smiled too sweetly while plotting something foolish. But the look in Lucien's eyes was not hatred. It was suspicion. And something darker. Something almost wounded. Adrian carefully raised his hands. "Your Highness. I don't remember clearly." Lucien's gaze sharpened. A convenient answer. "It's the truth." "Then let me remind you." Lucien leaned closer, the blade still steady. Last night, you approached me in the eastern corridor. You told me I would die before the first snow. Then you collapsed in my arms. Adrian's blood turned cold.
He had said that?
No. No, that was impossible. The Crown Prince was supposed to die before the first snow in the original novel's bad ending. Not now. Not publicly. And definitely not from Adrian's mouth.
Had the original Adrian known something?
Or had Adrian, in the chaos of reincarnation, spoken from memories he should not have? Lucien lowered his voice. Tell me, Adrian Vale. Who told you that? Adrian's mind raced. If he said he knew the future, he would be treated as a madman or a spy. If he lied poorly, Lucien might cut him down. If he stayed silent, he would become suspicious. So he did the only thing he could. He looked directly into Lucien's eyes and said, "No one told me." The room went silent. Lucien's expression did not change, but his fingers tightened around the sword. Adrian continued before fear could stop him. I had a nightmare. That is all. A nightmare. Yes. In this nightmare I died? Adrian nodded slowly. Lucien studied him. Then, without warning, he withdrew the sword. The absence of the blade against Adrian's skin made him inhale sharply. Lucien turned to the guards. Leave us. The guards hesitated. Your Highness. Leave. They obeyed immediately. The servants followed them out, pale and silent. The door closed with a heavy sound. Adrian was suddenly alone with the most dangerous man in the Empire. Lucien placed the sword on the table beside the bed. Then he did something Adrian never expected. He sat down. Not like a prince judging a criminal. Like a man who had not slept. Tell me everything you saw, Lucien said. Adrian stared at him. In the novel, Lucien never asked for help. He trusted no one. He carried every burden alone until it destroyed him. That was part of why readers loved him. He was tragic, noble, untouchable. But this Lucien looked tired. Not weak. Never weak. But tired in a way only someone surrounded by enemies could be. Adrian's fear shifted into something else. A terrible understanding. This was not just his survival story. Lucien was already in danger. And Adrian might be the only one who knew how bad it would become. I saw snow, Adrian said carefully. Red snow. Lucien's eyes darkened. I saw a hunting lodge outside the capital. White banners. A broken carriage wheel. Men wearing royal armor, but they were not royal guards. Lucien went very still. Adrian noticed. So that part mattered. He pressed on, choosing every word like stepping across thin ice. And I saw you reach for someone's hand before you fell. Whose hand? Adrian hesitated. In the novel, it had been Lady Evelina, the heroine. But this version had already changed. And if he said the wrong name, he could push the story back onto its original path. I couldn't see their face, Adrian lied. Lucien watched him for a long moment. You are lying. Adrian's pulse jumped. Lucien leaned forward, close enough that Adrian could smell rain and steel on him. You lie beautifully, Lucien murmured. But your eyes betray you. Adrian's throat tightened. This was dangerous. Too dangerous. He needed distance. He needed to escape the palace, avoid every major event, stay far away from the Crown Prince, and survive until the ending changed. He threw back the blanket and tried to stand. I apologize for troubling your highness. I will return to Duke Vale's mansion immediately and never speak of this again. Lucien caught his wrist. The touch was firm, warm, and impossibly controlled. Adrian froze. It was not painful. But it stopped him completely. You are not leaving, Lucien said. Adrian looked down at Lucien's hand around his wrist, then back at him. Your Highness. I have enemies in my palace, traitors in my guard, and now a nobleman with a reputation for vanity wakes up knowing the details of an assassination that has not yet happened. Lucien stood. Their faces were suddenly too close. You think I will let you walk away? Adrian forced a shaky smile. I am not useful enough to keep. That is where you are wrong. The words landed harder than they should have. In every version of the story Adrian remembered, he was disposable. Used by his father. Mocked by nobles. Framed by conspirators. Forgotten by readers after his death. But Lucien was looking at him as if he had value. As if he was not a mistake. As if letting him go was impossible. Adrian pulled his wrist back, but Lucien did not release him. "Your Highness," he said quietly, "I am not your ally." Lucien's gaze dropped briefly to Adrian's lips before returning to his eyes. "Then become one." Adrian's heart betrayed him with one violent beat. Outside the window, palace bells began to ring. Once. Twice. 3 times. Lucien turned toward the sound, and his expression hardened. Adrian knew that bell. Emergency summons. In the novel, it rang only when a royal family member was found dead. The door burst open before either of them could speak. A knight dropped to one knee, face pale. "Your Highness," he said, voice shaking. "Prince Cedric has been found murdered in the West Chapel." Adrian's blood drained from his face. That was impossible. Prince Cedric was not supposed to die until part 4 of the original story. Lucien slowly turned back to Adrian. His eyes were no longer unreadable. They were burning. The knight continued, each word sealing Adrian's fate. "And my lord, the murder weapon was found in Lord Adrian Vale's room." Adrian could not breathe. Lucien's hand tightened around his wrist. Not to restrain him this time. To keep him from falling. And Adrian understood, with terrifying clarity, that the story had already begun hunting him. But this time, the Crown Prince was not letting him die alone. End of Part 1. Part 2. The West Chapel had always been described in the novel as a place of silence. A holy room built from white stone and blue glass, where emperors were crowned, queens were buried, and royal children whispered prayers beneath painted saints. But when Adrian entered it beside Crown Prince Lucien, there was no holiness left. Only blood. Prince Cedric lay at the foot of the altar, one hand curled against the marble floor, as if he had tried to crawl toward salvation before death took him. His golden hair was darkened with red near the side of his neck. A ceremonial dagger had been placed beside his body, its silver handle wrapped in a handkerchief embroidered with the Vale family crest. Adrian's family crest. Adrian stopped breathing. "No," he whispered. The word barely escaped him, but Lucien heard it. The Crown Prince stood close at his side, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Guards filled the chapel. Priests trembled near the columns. Servants whispered behind gloved hands. Everyone stared at Adrian. Not with doubt. With certainty. To them, the answer was already clear. The useless second son of Duke Vale had murdered a prince. A perfect scandal. A perfect villain. A perfect death sentence. Lucien's face was cold enough to freeze the room. "Who found him?" he asked. A royal knight stepped forward. "I did, Your Highness. During morning inspection." "And who touched the body?" "No one, Your Highness. We sealed the chapel immediately." Lucien's eyes moved across the scene, sharp and merciless. Adrian had read enough of the novel to know that expression. It meant the Crown Prince was not grieving yet. He was calculating. But Cedric was his younger brother. Even if their relationship had been strained in the book, even if Cedric had been a cowardly prince used by the real villains, he was still blood. Adrian looked at Lucien's hand. It was curled tightly at his side. Not shaking. Never shaking. But tight enough that his knuckles had gone white. A strange pain pressed into Adrian's chest. He had spent the first part of the story fearing Lucien. Now, standing beside him in a room full of death, Adrian realized something worse. Lucien was alone. Completely alone. And the Empire was already closing its teeth around him. A minister in dark green robes stepped forward, bowing low. "Your Highness," he said carefully. "With respect, Lord Adrian must be detained at once." Adrian recognized him from the novel. Marquis Belrose. A court minister with a soft voice and poisonous loyalty. In the original story, he served the Empress Dowager while pretending to support the Crown Prince. One of the real spiders in the palace web. Lucien did not look at him. On what grounds? The chapel went silent. Even Belrose seemed surprised. "Your Highness, the weapon was found in his room." "Was he seen entering the chapel?" "No, but—"
"Was blood found on his clothes?"
"Not yet examined."
"Did anyone witness him with Prince Cedric last night?" Belrose's smile tightened.
"The investigation has only just begun." "Then begin it before you ask me to arrest someone."
A ripple moved through the room.
Adrian stared at Lucien. This was not how the original story went. In the novel, when Adrian was framed later for treason, Lucien did not save him. He allowed the trial to happen, cold and distant, because Adrian had already destroyed every chance of trust between them. But now Lucien was standing between him and the court, protecting him.
"Why?"
Belrose lowered his head. "Of course, Your Highness. I only worry that your mercy may be misunderstood." Lucien finally turned to him. "Then allow me to be clear. Lord Adrian Vale is under my personal custody. Anyone who touches him without my order will answer to me." Adrian's heart slammed once. Personal custody. That was not freedom. But it was not a dungeon. And in this palace, that difference meant everything. Lucien looked at him. "Come." Adrian followed because he had no other choice. As they left the chapel, whispers chased them like arrows. "Murderer. Duke Vale's son. Didn't he threaten His Highness last night? I heard he collapsed in the prince's arms. He must have planned this." Adrian kept his face calm, but inside, panic clawed at him. This was worse than the book. Much worse. Cedric's death had been moved forward. The murder weapon had been planted in Adrian's room. The court already wanted him condemned. Someone knew the story. Or someone knew Adrian was dangerous. Lucien led him through a private corridor guarded by imperial knights. No servants walked here. No nobles lurked behind curtains. Only portraits of dead emperors watched them pass. At last, Lucien opened a door and pulled Adrian into a study. The moment the door closed, Adrian turned on him. "Why did you defend me?" Lucien removed his gloves slowly. "Would you prefer I let them drag you away?" "That is not what I asked." "No." Lucien placed the gloves on his desk. "You asked why." Adrian folded his arms, trying to hide how badly his hands wanted to shake. "Yes." Lucien stepped closer. "Because guilty men do not look at corpses with that kind of fear." Adrian laughed once, breathless and bitter. "That is your proof?" "It is my instinct." "Your instinct could get you killed." "It often has." The answer was quiet. Too quiet. Adrian's anger faded before he could stop it. Lucien moved to the window, looking out over the palace gardens below. Morning light touched his face, but it did not soften him. "Cedric and I argued last night," he said. Adrian went still. "In front of witnesses?" "No. Privately." "That is bad." Lucien looked back at him. "I know." In the original novel, Cedric had been jealous of Lucien's position. He was weak, easily manipulated, desperate for approval from the Empress Dowager. But he had not been evil. He was supposed to live long enough to regret everything. Now he was dead. And Lucien had a private argument with him hours before the murder. Adrian understood at once. "You are not only protecting me," he said. "You are protecting yourself." Lucien's gaze sharpened. "If I am guilty," Adrian continued, "then the court gets a simple answer. The foolish villain killed a prince. Execute him and move on. But if I am innocent, then someone murdered my brother to frame you," Lucien finished. "And possibly to weaken me." Adrian nodded. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them felt dangerous, not empty. Lucien walked to his desk and opened a locked drawer. He removed a folded paper and handed it to Adrian. Adrian hesitated before taking it. It was a report. Short. Neat. Terrifying. His room had been searched before dawn. The dagger was found beneath his pillow. A servant claimed to have seen Adrian leaving the East Wing near midnight. Another claimed Cedric had received a note signed with Adrian's name. Everything had been arranged too perfectly. Adrian's stomach sank. They prepared this before Cedric was killed, he murmured. Lucien's eyes narrowed. Explain. No real investigation moves this fast. Too many witnesses. Too much evidence. Too clean. Adrian looked up. This was ready. Lucien watched him carefully. You speak as if you have seen court crimes before. Adrian almost said, I read them. Instead he said, I know what a trap looks like. Lucien moved closer. Then tell me how to escape it. Adrian looked down at the report again. In the novel, the first major palace conspiracy involved three things: a forged letter, a bribed servant, and a hidden passage beneath the West Chapel used by assassins serving the Empress Dowager. But that had happened later. If the structure remained similar, then the killer had not entered through the main chapel doors. There is a passage, Adrian said. Lucien froze. What passage? Beneath the West Chapel. Lucien's voice dropped. No such passage exists. Yes, it does. How do you know? Adrian cursed himself internally. Too fast. Too careless. Lucien stepped closer until Adrian had to tilt his head up. Adrian. The way he said his name made Adrian's skin prickle. Not cruelly. Intimately. As if the name already belonged in his mouth. How? Lucien asked. Do you know? Adrian could lie again. He should lie again. But Lucien had defended him before the court. Lucien had claimed him under personal custody. Lucien had given him the report instead of locking him in chains. Trusting the Crown Prince was dangerous. But not trusting him might be fatal. So Adrian gave him half the truth. When I fainted last night, I saw things, Adrian said. Not only your death. Other things. Places I have never been. Conversations I never heard. People smiling while hiding knives. Lucien's expression became unreadable. You expect me to believe you are a prophet? No, Adrian swallowed. I expect you to believe I want to live. That answer struck something. Lucien's eyes softened for only a second, but Adrian saw it. Then it was gone. Show me the passage. Adrian blinked. Now? Unless you would prefer to wait until the entire court agrees on your execution. Adrian shut his mouth. Fair point. They returned to the West Chapel through a private route, this time with only one trusted knight following them. Sir Cassian, Lucien's personal guard. Cassian was broad-shouldered, silent, and clearly unhappy about Adrian's presence. Adrian ignored him. The chapel had been cleared, Cedric's body removed for examination. The blood remained on the marble like a stain the palace could not hide. Adrian forced himself not to look at it for long. He walked toward the altar. In the novel, the passage opened beneath the statue of Saint Orlean, but only when pressure was placed on the broken star carved into the floor. The problem was that Adrian had never physically been here. Reading a scene was different from living it. He crouched near the statue, running his fingers over the cold marble. Lucien stood behind him, watchful. You are certain? He asked. No. That is comforting. Adrian shot him a look. Would your highness like to be framed instead? Lucien's mouth almost curved. Almost. For some reason, that nearly smile was more distracting than his coldness. Adrian looked away quickly and pressed his palm against the carved star. Nothing happened. Cassian exhaled sharply. Your highness, this is a waste. A low click echoed beneath the floor. Everyone froze. Then the stone beside the altar shifted open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Cassian drew his sword. Lucien looked at Adrian. Not with suspicion this time. With something far more dangerous. Belief. Adrian wished it did not make his chest feel warm. They descended carefully. The passage smelled of dust, damp stone, and old secrets. Their footsteps echoed too loudly. Lucien walked first with a lantern, Cassian behind them, leaving Adrian in the middle. Protected. Or trapped. He could not decide which. At the bottom, they found footprints in the dust. Fresh ones. And a torn piece of dark green fabric, caught on a rusted nail. Adrian picked it up. Marquis Belrose's robes had been dark green. Lucien's face hardened. But before he could speak, A sound came from deeper in the tunnel. A whisper. Then metal scraping stone. Cassian stepped forward. Someone is here. The lantern flickered. Adrian's body went cold. Because he remembered this feeling from the novel. This tunnel was not only an escape route. It was a hunting ground. A crossbow bolt shot from the darkness. Lucien moved instantly, shoving Adrian behind him as the bolt struck the wall where Adrian's head had been a heartbeat before. "Run!" Cassian shouted. But there was nowhere to run. Another bolt flew. Lucien pulled Adrian against his chest and turned, shielding him with his own body. Adrian heard the prince inhale sharply. Too sharply. "Lucien!" Adrian whispered. For the first time, he used his name without title. Lucien looked down at him, eyes wide with pain. Then Adrian saw it. A bolt buried in Lucien's shoulder. Blood spread across the black fabric of his coat. Adrian's world narrowed to red. No. No, this was wrong. Lucien was not supposed to be injured here. This scene had changed again. From the darkness, a masked attacker raised another crossbow, aimed directly at Lucien's heart. Adrian did not think. He grabbed the ceremonial dagger from Lucien's belt and threw it with every bit of strength in his body. The blade spun through the air and struck the attacker's arm. The crossbow fired wild, the bolt shattering against the ceiling. Cassian lunged forward, sword flashing. The attacker vanished into the dark, retreating through a side passage. Silence crashed down. Adrian turned back to Lucien. The Crown Prince had dropped to one knee. Blood ran between his fingers. Adrian caught him before he fell. "Why did you do that?" Adrian demanded, voice shaking. "Why would you shield me?" Lucien's face was pale, but his gaze stayed locked on Adrian's. "Because," he breathed, "you looked afraid." Adrian stared at him. His heart twisted so painfully he almost hated it. "You idiot," Adrian whispered. Lucien gave him the faintest smile. Then his eyes closed. Adrian held him tighter, panic breaking through every wall he had built since waking in this world. "Lucien. Lucien, open your eyes." Cassian rushed back, swearing under his breath. But Adrian barely heard him. Because on the floor beside Lucien's fallen lantern, half hidden in the dust, was a silver ring. A ring Adrian recognized from the novel. Not Belrose's. Not the Empress Dowager's. It belonged to the person who was supposed to be the story's innocent heroine. Lady Evelina. Adrian looked from the ring to Lucien's bleeding body. And for the first time, he wondered if the heroine of this story had never been innocent at all. End of Part 2. Part 3. Lucien did not wake for 3 hours. Those 3 hours felt longer than Adrian's entire first life. The Crown Prince had been carried out of the hidden passage through a private corridor, his blood staining Cassian's gloves and Adrian's sleeves. The palace physician had arrived in silence, face grim, and ordered everyone except Cassian out of the room. But Adrian refused to leave. No one expected that from him. Not from Adrian Vale. The useless duke's son. The spoiled noble. The disposable villain. Even Cassian had stared at him, as if Adrian had suddenly grown another face. "My lord," the knight said sharply, blocking the bedroom door with one arm. "You are still a suspect in Prince Cedric's murder. You cannot remain alone with His Highness." Adrian looked down at the blood drying on his hands. Lucien's blood. "If I wanted him dead," Adrian said coldly, "I would not have thrown a dagger to save him." Cassian's jaw tightened. "That does not prove loyalty." "No," Adrian replied. "But it proves I am not stupid." The knight's expression darkened. For a moment, Adrian thought Cassian might physically drag him out. Instead, the physician emerged from Lucien's chamber with a stained cloth in one hand. "The bolt missed the heart," the old man said. "It struck deep, but the poison is weak. He will live if the fever does not rise." Poison. Adrian's stomach dropped. Cassian cursed under his breath. The physician turned to Adrian. "You. Lord Vale." Adrian stiffened. "Yes." "His Highness was holding your sleeves so tightly that we had to cut the fabric from your coat." The physician's eyes narrowed, not unkindly. "If you are staying, Sit by the bed and do not faint. Adrian did not argue. He entered the chamber. Lucien lay beneath white sheets, his black coat removed, his shoulder wrapped in clean bandages that were already turning pink. Without his uniform, without his sword, without the terrible weight of the crown on his shoulders, he looked painfully human. Still beautiful. Still dangerous. But human. Adrian sat beside the bed, his hands folded tightly in his lap. He told himself he was only staying because Lucien was useful. Because Lucien was his shield against the palace. Because if the crown prince died, Adrian would be executed by sunrise. He told himself many logical things. None of them explained why his chest hurt every time Lucien's breathing changed. Cassian stood near the wall, arms crossed. "You knew about the passage," he said. Adrian did not look at him. "Yes." "You knew someone would attack." "No." "But you recognized the ring." Adrian finally turned. Cassian's eyes were sharp. So he had seen. Adrian's fingers tightened. "I recognized it," he admitted. "Lady Evelina's." Adrian said nothing. Cassian stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Lady Evelina has been favored by the court for years. The Empress Dowager treats her like a daughter. Nobles call her the future bride of the crown prince. Accusing her without proof would destroy you." Adrian almost laughed. "Sir Cassian, I am already being destroyed." "That is not an answer." "No," Adrian said. "It is a warning." Cassian stared at him. Before the knight could respond, Lucien stirred. Adrian immediately leaned forward. "Lucien." Cassian's brows lifted at the lack of title, but Adrian ignored him. Lucien's lashes fluttered. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then sharpening when they found Adrian's face. For one quiet second, no one moved. Then Lucien whispered, "You stayed." Adrian's throat tightened. "I was waiting to see if you would die and make my situation worse." Cassian made a sound of disbelief. But Lucien's mouth curved faintly. Even half-conscious and pale, he looked amused. "How practical of you." "I try." Lucien's gaze drifted to Adrian's hands. "You're hurt." Adrian looked down. There was a thin cut across his palm from where he had grabbed the dagger too quickly. He had not even noticed. "It is nothing." Lucien slowly lifted his uninjured hand. Adrian should have moved away. He did not. Lucien's fingers brushed the edge of the cut, gentle enough to make Adrian's breath catch. "You bleed because of me," Lucien murmured. Adrian forced himself to sound unaffected. "You have a bolt wound. Do not make this dramatic. I am a prince. Drama is part of the position." Against his will, Adrian laughed softly. The sound surprised him. It surprised Lucien too. For a heartbeat, the room changed. The murder, the accusation, the poison, the palace full of enemies, all of it remained, but something warmer slipped between them. Something fragile. Something Adrian did not know how to name. Then Lucien's expression hardened. "The ring." Adrian glanced at Cassian. The knight stepped forward and placed the silver ring on a folded cloth beside the bed. Lucien stared at it. The ring was delicate, set with a pale blue stone shaped like a teardrop. Evelina's family symbol. In the novel, Lady Evelina had been kind, pure, and beloved by all. She was the character readers trusted. The one who softened Lucien's heart. The one who survived every conspiracy, because she was meant to stand beside the emperor. But Adrian remembered small details now. Scenes that had seemed innocent. Evelina arriving moments after disasters. Evelina crying at perfect times. Evelina forgiving enemies only after they were ruined. The novel had called it grace. But what if it had been control? Lucien looked at Adrian. "Tell me what you know." Adrian hesitated. He could feel the shape of the story shifting around him. Every truth he revealed changed something. Every lie placed him deeper in danger. But Lucien had taken a poison bolt for him. So Adrian said, "Lady Evelina is not what the court believes." Cassian's expression sharpened. Lucien remained silent. Adrian continued, choosing his words carefully. "She is loved because she makes people need her.
She listens to secrets. She comforts the lonely. She remembers weaknesses. And when someone becomes inconvenient, Lucien's gaze darkened. They disappear? Or destroy themselves? Cassian shook his head. That is speculation. It is survival. Adrian looked at him. And right now, Your Highness is alive because we found her ring in a tunnel beneath a murder scene. Cassian had no answer. Lucien reached for the ring, but Adrian caught his wrist before he could touch it. Don't. Lucien looked at Adrian's hand around his wrist. Adrian realized what he had done and quickly let go. There may be poison on it, he said. Lucien's eyes stayed on him a moment longer than necessary. Then he nodded. Cassian, seal it. Cassian wrapped the ring carefully. Lucien tried to sit up. Adrian immediately pressed a hand to his chest. Absolutely not. The room went silent. Cassian looked horrified. Adrian froze as he realized he had just ordered the Crown Prince to stay down. Lucien looked at Adrian's hand against his chest. Then at Adrian's face. You are bold when I am injured. You are foolish when you are injured. Cassian coughed once into his fist. Lucien's eyes held the faintest trace of amusement, but his voice was serious when he spoke. Cedric's death will be used against us by tonight. Belrose will call for your arrest. The Empress Dowager will pretend reluctance while encouraging it. Evelina will cry in public and say she cannot believe you would do such a thing. Adrian's stomach twisted. That sounded exactly like her. Lucien continued. If I appear weak, they will move faster. You are weak, Adrian said. Lucien's eyes narrowed. Physically, Adrian added quickly. For now. I cannot remain hidden. You can if you use me. Lucien went still. Cassian frowned. Use you how? Adrian stood, walking toward the window. Below, the palace courtyard was already filling with nobles, ministers, and guards. News had spread quickly. Too quickly. Everyone wanted blood. His blood. Adrian turned back to Lucien. Let them think I am still in your custody because you suspect me, he said. Let them believe you are cold and undecided. Meanwhile, I will watch who becomes impatient. Lucien's gaze sharpened with interest. You want to act as bait. I am already bait. I would rather choose the trap. Cassian's voice was hard. That is reckless. Adrian smiled without humor. No. Reckless was being born Adrian Vale. Lucien looked at him differently then. Not as a tool. Not as a suspect. As if he had heard the pain beneath the joke. Adrian hated that he noticed. Lucien's voice lowered. You speak as if you despise your own name. Adrian looked away. In his past life, he had been no one important. A reader. A tired office worker. Someone who ate convenience store meals, fell asleep with novels open on his phone, and dreamed of worlds that could not hurt him. Now he had a noble name, a beautiful face, and a death sentence written into fate. I despise dying because of it, he said. Lucien was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You will not. Adrian turned back. The words should have sounded like a promise from a prince to a pawn. Instead, they sounded dangerously personal. Before Adrian could answer, the chamber doors opened. A servant entered, bowing so low his forehead nearly touched the floor. Your Highness, he said, voice trembling. The Empress Dowager requests your presence in the Hall of White Roses. Lucien's expression turned cold. Adrian knew that hall. In the novel, it was where reputations were executed before bodies followed. The servant continued. All ministers have gathered. Duke Vale has arrived as well. Adrian's blood chilled. His father. Duke Magnus Vale. A man who, in the original story, cared more about preserving the family name than saving his son. When Adrian was accused of treason, Duke Vale had publicly disowned him before the trial even began. If he was here, Adrian was in danger. Lucien tried again to rise. This time, Adrian did not stop him. But as Lucien swung his legs over the side of the bed, pain flashed across his face. Adrian stepped closer without thinking. Lean on me. Cassian looked ready to protest. Lucien looked at Adrian. You understand what they will say if they see that? Adrian gave him a sharp smile. They already think I murdered a prince. Let them add seducing the crown prince to the list. Something unreadable passed through Lucien's eyes. Do you always use danger as armor? Adrian offered his arm. Only when it fits. Lucien accepted. The weight of him against Adrian was not heavy, but it was warm. Too warm. Adrian could feel every careful breath Lucien took, every small shift of pain he tried to hide. They walked slowly from the chamber with Cassian behind them. By the time they reached the Hall of White Roses, the entire court was waiting. The hall was enormous, lined with white marble pillars wrapped in thorned roses. Nobles stood in glittering clusters. Ministers watched with hungry eyes. At the far end, the Empress Dowager sat on a silver chair, dressed in mourning black despite the fact Cedric's body was barely cold. Beside her stood Lady Evelina. She was breathtaking. Golden hair. Soft eyes. A white dress like innocence made visible. When she saw Lucien leaning on Adrian, her expression cracked for half a second. Only half a second. But Adrian saw it. Then tears filled her eyes. Lord Adrian, she whispered, voice trembling beautifully. How could this happen? The court murmured. Adrian nearly admired the performance. Lucien's hand tightened slightly around Adrian's arm. The Empress Dowager raised one delicate hand. Silence fell. Lord Adrian Vale, she said, voice gentle enough to be cruel. A prince is dead. His blood cries out for justice. Evidence points to you. Yet His Highness shields you. Her eyes moved to Lucien. My dear Crown Prince, grief must not cloud judgment. Lucien smiled faintly. It was not a kind smile. Then it is fortunate I am not grieving blindly. The hall chilled. Duke Vale stepped forward. Adrian's father looked exactly as the memories described. Tall, silver-haired, handsome in a severe way, his eyes empty of warmth. He did not look at Adrian like a son. He looked at him like a stain. Your Highness, Duke Vale said, bowing. House Vale will not obstruct justice. If my son has brought shame upon the crown, I surrender him to imperial law. Adrian expected the words. Still, something inside him cracked. He told himself it did not matter. This was not his real father. This was not his real life. But pain did not care about logic. Lucien felt the tremor that passed through him. Adrian knew he did because Lucien moved just slightly closer. Not enough for the court to notice. Enough for Adrian to feel. Then Evelina stepped forward, tears shining. I cannot believe Lord Adrian would do such a terrible thing, she said softly. But last night Prince Cedric came to me afraid. He said Lord Adrian had asked to meet him privately. Gasps spread through the hall. Adrian's eyes narrowed. There it was. The next thread of the trap. Evelina pressed a hand to her chest. I did not understand then. I wish I had stopped him. Belrose lowered his head dramatically. Your Highness, how much more proof do we need? Lucien's expression did not change. But Adrian could feel the tension in his arm. The poison was still in him. The wound was fresh. The court was circling. Evelina was smiling through tears. They were running out of time. Adrian stepped forward. Lucien's hand slipped from his arm. The hall turned toward him. Adrian's voice was calm when he spoke. Lady Evelina, he said. You claim Prince Cedric told you I asked to meet him? She blinked prettily. Yes. What time? Shortly after midnight. Adrian nodded. Strange. A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. He smiled. Because shortly after midnight, I was unconscious in the Crown Prince's private medical chamber. There are palace physicians, servants, and guards who can confirm it. The court stirred. Evelina's tears faltered. Only slightly. Adrian took one more step forward. And if Prince Cedric truly came to you at that hour, his smile sharpened, then perhaps your Highness should ask why Lady Evelina was meeting a royal prince alone in the middle of the night. The hall exploded into whispers. Evelina went pale. For the first time, the perfect heroine looked at Adrian not with pity, but hatred. There you are, Adrian thought. Lucien's voice cut through the noise. Enough. Silence returned instantly. The Crown Prince stood straighter despite his injury, his face pale but terrifyingly composed. Lord Adrian will remain under my protection, Lucien said. Anyone who objects may accuse me directly. No one dared speak. Not Belrose. Not the Empress Dowager. Not Duke Vale. Lucien turned to Adrian. Their eyes met across the hall. And in front of the entire court, he held out his hand. A dangerous invitation. A public declaration. A choice Adrian could not undo. Adrian knew taking that hand would make him Lucien's ally in everyone's eyes. Worse, it would make him his weakness. But refusing it would throw him back to the wolves. So Adrian placed his hand in Lucien's. The court gasped. Lucien's fingers closed around his. And somewhere behind Evelina's perfect face, something monstrous began to wake. End of Part 3. Part 4. The moment Adrian placed his hand in Lucien's, the court changed. It was not loud at first. No one shouted. No one dared. But Adrian felt the shift ripple through the hall of white roses like a blade sliding free from its sheath. A breath caught here. A silk fan snapped shut there. A minister looked away too quickly. A noblewoman pressed gloved fingers to her lips. Duke Vale's expression hardened until he looked carved from stone. And Lady Evelina. Lady Evelina smiled. It was small, almost invisible beneath her trembling innocence. To anyone else, she looked wounded. Betrayed. Heartbroken by the Crown Prince's public protection of a suspected murderer. But Adrian saw the truth. Her eyes were calm. Too calm. She had lost this round, but she was already preparing the next one. Lucien's fingers remained wrapped around Adrian's hand, warm and steady despite the fever beginning to burn beneath his skin. Adrian could feel the slight weakness in his grip, the hidden pain he refused to show. He wanted to pull Lucien away from this room. He wanted to tell him to stop acting like an untouchable prince when his body was fighting poison. But the court was watching. So Adrian smiled instead. Softly. Beautifully. Like the villain they expected him to be. If there are no further accusations, Lucien said, his voice cold enough to silence every whisper. Lord Adrian will return with me. The Empress Dowager's face remained gentle. That made her more frightening. Of course, Your Highness, she said. You have always been merciful. Lucien's eyes narrowed slightly. And you have always mistaken restraint for mercy. A few nobles lowered their heads. No one wanted to be seen reacting. The Empress Dowager's smile did not break, but Adrian noticed the way her fingers tightened around the armrest of her silver chair. Lucien turned without waiting for permission. Still holding Adrian's hand, he walked out of the hall. Adrian followed him through the massive doors, feeling every stair strike his back like knives. Only when they entered a private corridor did Lucien's steps falter. Adrian caught him immediately. Lucien. The Crown Prince braced one hand against the wall. I am fine. You are bleeding through your bandage. I said I am fine. And I heard you lie. Lucien looked at him. For a second, Adrian expected anger. Instead, there was exhaustion. Raw and quiet. The kind Lucien never allowed anyone to see. Cassian rushed forward from behind them. Your Highness, we need to return to your chambers. No, Lucien said. Adrian stared at him. No? Lucien straightened with visible effort. If I disappear now, they will know the wound is serious. It is serious. Then they cannot know. Adrian wanted to argue, but he understood too well. In this palace, weakness had a scent. And predators always followed blood. Lucien turned to Cassian. Send word that I will attend the council meeting in 1 hour. Cassian looked horrified. Your Highness. 1 hour. The knight bowed, jaw tight. Yes, Your Highness. Adrian waited until Cassian left before stepping closer. You cannot keep doing this. Lucien looked down at him. Doing what? Pretending your body is less important than your throne. Lucien gave a faint, humorless smile. That is what a crown prince is. No,
Adrian said, sharper than he intended. That is what they trained you to become. Something flickered in Lucien's eyes. Adrian realized too late that he had touched something old. Something painful. Lucien's voice dropped. You speak like you know me. Adrian's heart tightened. Because in a terrible way he did. He knew the version of Lucien written for tragedy. The lonely prince who trusted too late, loved too carefully, and died in endings where no one reached him in time. But this Lucien was not just a character. He was standing in front of Adrian, pale from blood loss, stubborn enough to face a council while poisoned, and foolish enough to shield someone the world wanted dead. Adrian looked away first. I know enough. Lucien stepped closer. The corridor was empty, but suddenly it felt too small. And what do you know, Adrian? The sound of his name in Lucien's voice was dangerous. Adrian forced himself to answer lightly. I know you enjoy ignoring medical advice. Lucien's mouth curved faintly. That is not a secret. I know you trust Cassian. Yes. I know you hate Belrose. I dislike many ministers. And I know, Adrian said quietly, that you loved your brother more than you will admit. Lucien went still. The air tightened. For one awful moment, Adrian thought he had gone too far. Then Lucien looked away. His face remained composed, but his throat moved as he swallowed. Cedric was weak, he said. Adrian heard what he did not say. Cedric was foolish. Cedric was jealous. Cedric made mistakes. Cedric was still my brother. Adrian softened despite himself. In the nightmare I saw, he said, Cedric regretted many things before he died. Lucien's eyes returned to him. Did he? Yes. It was not exactly a lie. In the original novel, Cedric had died begging Lucien for forgiveness after realizing how badly he had been used. Readers had cried over it. Adrian remembered being annoyed at first, then sad despite himself. Lucien looked out the corridor window. For a moment, the Crown Prince was silent. Then he said, He came to me last night. Adrian stilled. You argued. Yes. Lucien's voice was low. But not about the throne. What was it about? Lucien's gaze darkened. You. Adrian's breath caught. Me? Lucien turned back to him. Cedric said someone told him you were dangerous. That you knew things no noble should know. That if I let you near me, I would be ruined. Adrian's skin prickled. Who told him? He refused to say. Evelina, Adrian whispered. Perhaps. No. It was her. Adrian began pacing, thoughts racing. She tested Cedric. She used his jealousy, pushed him toward you, made sure he seemed unstable, then killed him before he could reveal her name. Lucien watched him. You are certain. I am beginning to understand her role. Adrian stopped. She does not strike directly unless she must. She makes others move first. Like the perfect heroine of the novel. Always nearby. Always grieving. Always innocent. Lucien's expression hardened. Then she will move again. Yes. Adrian looked up at him. And this time, she will target what you protected in public. Meaning you. Adrian smiled bitterly. I was already her target. No, Lucien's voice was quiet. Now you are mine in the eyes of the court. Adrian's heart jumped. Lucien seemed to realize what he had said only after saying it. Silence fell between them. Adrian should have laughed. He should have turned it into a joke. He should have reminded Lucien that possession, even political possession, was dangerous. Instead, he stood there with heat rising in his face like an idiot. Lucien looked away first. Under my protection, he clarified. Of course, Adrian said too quickly. That is what I understood. It was not. They both knew it. Before the silence could become unbearable, Cassian returned. Your Highness, he said, bowing. A sealed message arrived from Duke Vale. Adrian's stomach tightened. Lucien looked at him before taking the letter. The seal was black wax stamped with the Vale crest. Adrian recognized it from the memories of this body. A hawk with its talons around a broken crown. Lucien broke the seal and read. His expression grew colder with every line. Adrian tried to keep his voice steady. What does he want? Lucien handed him the letter. Adrian took it. The words were neat, formal, and merciless. Duke Vale offered to publicly disown Adrian to protect the honor of House Vale. He also requested permission to remove Adrian from the palace for private discipline before imperial judgment. Private discipline. Adrian's fingers went numb. The memories came without warning. A younger Adrian standing in a cold study. Duke Vale's voice telling him he was embarrassing. A hand striking his face. Locked rooms. Silent dinners. Servants pretending not to see. The original Adrian had not been born cruel. He had been shaped into something desperate. Adrian folded the letter slowly. Lucien's eyes were on him. Adrian. I am fine. It sounded exactly like Lucien's earlier lie. Lucien noticed. His expression shifted. Did he hurt you? Adrian gave a small laugh. Which version of me are you asking about? Lucien did not smile. I am asking you. The answer lodged in Adrian's throat. He did not want this. He did not want sympathy from the Crown Prince. He did not want Lucien looking at him, as if he was not disposable. That kind of gaze was dangerous. It made survival feel less important than staying. Adrian looked down at the letter. In this family, he said quietly, a son is only protected when he is useful. Lucien took the letter from his hand. Then he tore it in half. Adrian stared. Cassian stared too. Lucien handed the pieces back to Cassian. Send Duke Vale my answer. Cassian blinked. What answer, Your Highness? Lucien's voice was ice. Lord Adrian is not returning to him. Not today. Not ever, unless Adrian chooses it. Adrian's heart stopped. No one had ever chosen him over power before. Not in his first life. Not in this one. He looked at Lucien, unable to speak. Lucien met his gaze with quiet certainty, as if what he had done was not shocking at all. As if protecting Adrian was obvious. As if Adrian was worth the trouble. And Adrian realized with sudden fear that he was beginning to trust him. The council meeting began exactly 1 hour later. Lucien entered in a fresh black coat, his bandage hidden beneath layers of royal dignity. Adrian walked at his side, slightly behind him, close enough to support him if he faltered and far enough to look like a prisoner under watch. It was a delicate lie. A useful one. The council chamber was smaller than the Hall of White Roses, but more dangerous. No decorative nobles stood here. Only people with power. Marquis Belrose was present. So were 3 generals, 2 judges, the imperial treasurer, and Lady Evelina. Adrian nearly stopped when he saw her. Why is she here? He murmured. Lucien answered without looking at him. Because the Empress Dowager wants her eyes in the room. Evelina bowed when they entered. Her eyes shone with false grief. Your Highness, she said softly. You should be resting. Lucien walked past her. Then this meeting should be brief. Adrian hid a smile. Belrose began the moment everyone sat. The murder of Prince Cedric requires immediate judgment. The public will demand justice by nightfall. Lord Adrian's involvement cannot be ignored. Lucien leaned back in his chair. Then present evidence, not theater. Belrose's mouth tightened. A judge unfolded a document. There is the dagger found in Lord Adrian's room, the servant testimony, and Lady Evelina's statement regarding Prince Cedric's fear. Adrian lifted his head. Has the dagger been tested for fingerprints, blood residue, or poison? The room went still. One general frowned. Fingerprints? Adrian froze. Wrong world. Too modern. Lucien's eyes flicked to him. Adrian recovered quickly. I mean hand oils, grip marks, traces from the killer. A weapon can reveal who held it last if properly examined. The imperial physician, who had been summoned to report on the prince's body, cleared his throat. It is possible to examine residue, though not commonly requested. Lucien's gaze sharpened. Then request it. Belrose looked displeased. Evelina lowered her eyes. Adrian noticed. Good. They had not expected him to challenge the evidence scientifically. Because Adrian Vale was supposed to be vain, not clever. The physician continued. There is another matter. Lucien turned. Speak. The wound on Prince Cedric's neck was too precise for an amateur. Whoever killed him understood anatomy. The room chilled. Adrian looked at Evelina. She did not move. But her fingers tightened around her handkerchief. The physician went on. Also, there were traces of a sleeping draught in his blood. Belrose frowned. A sleeping draught? Yes. Prince Cedric was likely unconscious or weakened before the fatal wound. Adrian's mind raced. In the original novel, Evelina had knowledge of herbs because she used them to heal wounded soldiers. The story had presented it as kindness. But herbs could heal. And herbs could kill. Lucien spoke first. Who in the palace has access to such drafts? The physician hesitated. Belrose interrupted. Many people. Physicians, servants, noble households. And Lady Evelina, Adrian said. Every eye turned to him. Evelina looked wounded. Lord Adrian? Adrian tilted his head. You are known for preparing calming teas for the ill, are you not? Her eyes glistened. I help people. I am sure you do. Belrose slammed a hand on the table. This is outrageous. Lucien's voice cut through the room. Sit down. Belrose sat. Adrian looked at Evelina and smiled politely. Lady Evelina, Prince Cedric was afraid last night. You said he came to you. Did you offer him tea? A single tear slipped down her cheek. Perfect. Beautiful. Practiced. I do not remember, she whispered. Adrian's smile faded. That was not a denial. Lucien noticed too. Before anyone could speak, the chamber doors opened. A young servant stumbled in, pale and shaking. Forgive me, he cried, falling to his knees. Forgive me, Your Highness. I cannot stay silent any more. Belrose rose halfway. Who allowed this? Lucien lifted a hand. The room fell quiet. The servant pressed his forehead to the floor. I lied. I lied about seeing Lord Adrian near the East Wing. I was paid to say it. Adrian's pulse quickened. Lucien's eyes became deadly calm. By whom? The servant trembled. His gaze flicked once toward Evelina. Only once. But everyone saw it. Evelina's face went white. Then the servant opened his mouth. No sound came out. His body jerked. Adrian saw the dark stains spreading from his lips. Poison! Stop him! Adrian shouted. Cashin moved, but too late. The servant collapsed onto the council floor, convulsing once before going still. Chaos erupted. Chairs scraped back. Someone screamed. The physician rushed forward. Lucien stood too quickly, pain flashing across his face. Adrian grabbed his arm before he fell. Across the room, Evelina was crying into her handkerchief. But Adrian saw her eyes over the white lace. Dry. Cold. Victorious. The servant had been silenced in front of them all. And now everyone in the council understood one thing. The killer was not hiding in the shadows anymore. They were inside the room. End of Part 4. Part 5. The servant died with poison on his lips and fear in his eyes. For several seconds after his body collapsed onto the council chamber floor, no one moved. The most powerful people in the empire stood frozen around the table like statues, their silks and metals and jeweled rings suddenly useless against the simple truth lying between them. A witness had been murdered in front of them. Not in a dark corridor. Not in a hidden passage. In the Crown Prince's council chamber. In front of judges, generals, ministers, physicians, Lady Evelina, and Lucien himself. Whoever controlled this conspiracy was not merely bold. They were confident. Adrian felt Lucien sway beside him. The Crown Prince caught the edge of the table with one hand, his other gripping Adrian's sleeve. The movement was slight, almost invisible beneath the chaos, but Adrian felt it. Lucien was still poisoned. Still wounded. Still bleeding beneath that perfectly buttoned black coat. And yet his first instinct was not to sit.
It was to scan the room for the killer. "Seal the chamber," Lucien ordered. His voice was not loud, but it cut through the panic instantly. Cashin moved first. "No one leaves," he shouted. Royal guards rushed to every door. Ministers protested. Nobles stepped back from the dead servant, as if death might stain their shoes. The physician knelt beside the body and touched the servant's neck. His face darkened. "He is gone." Adrian swallowed hard. He had known death in stories. He had read about betrayal, murder, poison, tragedy. But reading a line on a page was different from seeing a young servant's hand twitch once and fall still. This world was real. The people dying in it were real. And Adrian was no longer watching from the outside. Lucien leaned closer, his breath brushing Adrian's ear. "Did you see anything?" Adrian forced himself to focus. His eyes moved around the chamber. Belrose looked furious, but not surprised enough. One judge was trembling. The treasurer had gone pale. The generals were stiff, hands near their swords. Evelina stood near the far side of the room, one hand pressed to her mouth, eyes wet with tears that still had not fallen properly. Too controlled. Too perfect. But she could not have poisoned the servant directly. Everyone had been watching. Unless the poison had already been inside him. No. Adrian's gaze dropped to the servant's hand. There was a faint dark smear on his fingertips. Ink? No. Powder. Adrian stepped forward. Cashin immediately blocked him. "Do not touch the body." "I wasn't going to." Adrian crouched near the servant, careful not to get too close. The powder was stuck beneath the nails of his right hand. Pale gray. Almost invisible. Adrian remembered something from the novel. The Empress Dowager's faction used a poison called ashwake. It could be hidden in wax seals, dried flower petals, or powdered ink. It killed only after moisture touched it. A perfect poison for letters. Or confessions. Adrian looked up sharply. He brought something with him. Lucien's eyes narrowed. What? A note. A token. Something he touched before entering. Cashin searched the servant quickly, and found a folded strip of paper hidden inside his sleeve. The room went silent again. Cashin did not open it. He handed it to the physician with gloved fingers. The physician examined the paper carefully and nodded grimly. There is residue on the seal. Lucien's face hardened. Read it. The physician broke the seal with a tool and unfolded the paper. His voice was tense as he read. Confess only enough to confuse them. Do not name her. If you obey, your sister will live. A wave of whispers passed through the chamber. Adrian's stomach twisted. His sister. So the servant had not simply been paid. He had been threatened. Lucien's jaw tightened. Find the sister, he said to Cashin. Cashin bowed. Immediately. Belrose cleared his throat. Your Highness, this is tragic, but it does not clear Lord Adrian. Adrian slowly stood. Of course. Belrose would keep pushing until the noose closed. Lucien turned his head slightly. A witness lies, admits he was paid, then is silenced by poison, and your concern remains Lord Adrian? Belrose bowed, smooth as oil. My concern is justice. Your concern is survival, Adrian said. The minister's eyes snapped to him. Adrian smiled faintly. He was tired of pretending not to understand the game. You keep trying to make the court look at me, Adrian continued. Because if they look anywhere else, they may notice who benefits from Prince Cedric's death. Belrose's face darkened. You are a suspected murderer. You would do well to speak with humility. I tried humility. Everyone still wanted me dead. A few council members shifted uncomfortably. Lucien's mouth almost twitched. Adrian turned toward the others. Prince Cedric's death weakens the Crown Prince. Framing me pressures House Vale. A false witness creates urgency. Killing that witness creates fear. This is not a murder. It is a performance. The room quieted. Even the generals listened now. Adrian stepped closer to the table. And performances require an audience. Whoever planned this wanted all of you to see one thing. That anyone who speaks will die. His gaze moved to Evelina. For the first time, she looked back without tears. Only for a second. Then her mask returned. "How frightening," she whispered. "Lord Adrian speaks so cleverly for someone accused." Adrian tilted his head. "And Lady Evelina cries so beautifully for someone untouched by danger." A sharp silence followed. Belrose's hand struck the table. "Enough." Lucien's voice dropped. "I decide when it is enough." Belrose froze. The Crown Prince straightened, though Adrian saw the pain it cost him. "From this moment forward," Lucien said, "the investigation into Prince Cedric's murder will be conducted under my authority. The Council will provide records, access, and cooperation. Any obstruction will be treated as treason." The word treason landed heavily. Belrose's face went pale with anger. The Empress Dowager had not attended this meeting, but her shadow stretched across every frightened glance in the room. Lucien looked to the physician. "Examine the dagger, the note, the poison, and Prince Cedric's body again. I want facts, not convenient conclusions." "Yes, Your Highness." Then Lucien looked at Cassian. "Find the servant's sister alive." Cassian bowed and left at once. Adrian watched him go, unease curling in his stomach. If the sister was still alive, she might know who gave the order. If she was dead. Adrian did not finish the thought. The meeting ended with fear instead of judgment. That was a victory. A small one. A temporary one. But enough to keep Adrian alive for another day. Lucien dismissed the council, and the ministers filed out under guard one by one. Evelina was among the last to leave. As she passed Adrian, she slowed. Her perfume was sweet. Too sweet. Like lilies left too long in a closed room. "Lord Adrian," she said softly, so only he could hear. "You have become interesting." Adrian smiled without warmth. "And you have become careless." Her eyes flickered. Then her smile changed. Not innocent. Not kind. Something cold and ancient moved behind her face. "You think you know this story," she whispered. Adrian's blood turned to ice. Before he could answer, Evelina stepped away, her expression returning to wounded gentleness as she bowed to Lucien. "Please take care of your health, Your Highness," she said. "The Empire cannot lose another prince." Lucien watched her leave. The doors closed. Adrian stood very still. Lucien turned to him immediately. "What did she say?" Adrian did not answer at first. His mind was roaring. "You think you know this story?" That was not a normal threat. That was not something a character should say. Slowly, Adrian looked at Lucien. "I may not be the only one who remembers." Lucien's expression sharpened. "What does that mean?" Adrian opened his mouth. Then Lucien staggered. Adrian caught him just before he fell. "Lucien!" The Crown Prince's skin was burning. The fever had broken through his control at last. His eyes unfocused, but his hand still found Adrian's wrist. "Do not go alone," Lucien whispered. Even half-conscious, he was still giving orders. Adrian's chest tightened painfully. "I won't." That was a lie. Because the moment Lucien was taken back to his chambers, and the physician forced him into bed, Adrian knew exactly what he had to do. Someone else in this palace knew the shape of the story. Maybe Evelina. Maybe someone behind her. And if Adrian waited until Lucien recovered, the conspirators would move first. So when the palace grew dark and the guards outside Lucien's chamber changed shifts, Adrian took the silver ring, the poison note, and a cloak from the chair near the fire. He left through the servant corridor. Alone. The palace at night was a different creature. By day it glittered. By night it listened. Adrian moved carefully through narrow halls lit by dying candles. He remembered fragments from the novel, places mentioned once and forgotten by readers. The old laundry stairwell, the portrait gallery with the cracked mirror, the abandoned music room near the Empress Dowager's wing. Evelina had said he thought he knew the story. Fine. Then he would find the parts the story had hidden. His first destination was not Evelina's room. That would be too obvious. Instead, Adrian went to the old royal archive beneath the Eastern Tower. In the original novel, forbidden family records were kept there.
birth certificates, sealed trials, adoption papers, secret treaties. If Evelina was not who she claimed to be, there might be evidence. The archive door was guarded by 2 sleepy knights. Adrian did not have a key. But he had Adrian Vale's face. And Adrian Vale, unfortunately, had spent years being exactly the sort of shameless noble who could bluff his way past exhausted servants. He lifted his chin. "His Highness sent me." The guards straightened. "At this hour, my lord?" Adrian gave them a bored look. "Would you like to wake the Crown Prince and ask?" Both men went pale. "No, my lord." They opened the door. Adrian entered before his luck ran out. The archive smelled of dust, leather, and old secrets. Rows of shelves stretched into darkness. Moonlight filtered through narrow windows. Adrian took a candle and began searching. Evelina Armand. House Armand. Empress Dowager. Cedric. Hidden trials. Poison records. His fingers moved quickly over labels and ledgers. Then he found it. A sealed file from 12 years ago. House Armand. Succession dispute. Adrian broke the seal with trembling hands. Inside were witness statements, inheritance records, and a death certificate. The real Lady Evelina Armand had died at age 9 from fever. Adrian stared at the page. His breath stopped. If the real Evelina had died, then who was the woman standing in the palace? A floorboard creaked behind him. Adrian froze. A voice spoke from the darkness. "Careful, Lord Adrian. Some truths are written only to kill the person who reads them." Adrian turned slowly. Lady Evelina stood between the shelves, dressed in white, her golden hair loose over her shoulders. She was smiling. Not pretending now. Behind her stood 3 masked men with drawn blades. Adrian gripped the file in his hand. "You're not Evelina." Her smile widened. "And you are not Adrian." The candle flame flickered. Adrian's heart pounded. Evelina took one slow step closer. "How strange," she murmured. "The disposable villain learned to survive." The masked men moved. Adrian stepped back. There was nowhere to run. Then the archive door slammed open. A sword flashed through the darkness, striking the first masked man down before he reached Adrian. Lucien stood in the doorway, pale, feverish, coat thrown over his bandaged shoulder, blue eyes burning with fury. "I told you," he said, voice dangerously soft, "not to go alone." Adrian's heart nearly stopped. Evelina's smile vanished. Lucien lifted his sword toward her. "Step away from him." For the first time since Adrian woke inside this world, the false heroine looked afraid. End of Part 5. Part 6. For one breath, nobody moved. The archive was silent except for the soft crackle of Adrian's candle and the slow drip of rain outside the narrow tower windows. Lady Evelina stood between the shelves in her white night dress, her golden hair loose, her face no longer wearing its gentle mask. Behind her, 2 masked men tightened their grips on their blades. And at the doorway, Crown Prince Lucien Arkwright stood like a man who had dragged himself out of death just to become someone else's nightmare. His face was pale. Too pale. Sweat darkened the hair at his temples. His bandaged shoulder was hidden beneath a black coat thrown carelessly over one side, but Adrian could see the way Lucien held his sword slightly lower than usual. He was in pain. He should have been in bed. He should not have been standing at all. But his eyes were bright with fury, fixed on Evelina as if the fever burning inside him had only sharpened his anger. "I said," Lucien repeated softly. "Step away from him." Evelina looked at the sword, then at Adrian. For the first time since Adrian had met her, her smile did not return immediately. "You should be resting, Your Highness," she said. Lucien took one step into the archive. One of the masked men moved forward. Lucien's sword flashed. The man cried out and dropped his blade, clutching his arm. The movement was so fast Adrian barely saw it. Even wounded, even poisoned, Lucien was terrifying. The second attacker hesitated. Evelina's eyes narrowed. "Still impressive," she murmured. "No wonder the story loved you." Adrian's blood went cold. There it was again. The story.
Lucien's gaze flicked briefly toward Adrian. He had heard it too. Evelina gave a quiet laugh. Oh, don't look so surprised. Did you think your little secret belonged only to you? Adrian tightened his grip on the file. The real Evelina died 12 years ago, he said. Who are you? She tilted her head. Who are you? The question cut deeper than it should have. Adrian Vale was dead, in a way. The original soul who had lived in this body had vanished, leaving behind memories like bruises. And he, a stranger from another world, had stepped into the role of a villain already sentenced by fate. But Evelina's smile told him she wanted that uncertainty to wound him. So Adrian lifted his chin. I am the person you failed to kill. Her eyes sharpened. Lucien's mouth curved faintly, despite the pain. Evelina noticed, and something ugly passed across her face. How charming, she said. The doomed prince and the disposable villain, standing together as if love can rewrite a tragedy. Adrian's pulse jumped at the word love. Lucien did not react. Not visibly. But his fingers tightened around his sword. You talk too much for an assassin, Lucien said. I am not an assassin. Evelina's voice turned colder. I am the correction. Adrian frowned. Correction? Evelina stepped slowly between the shelves, her white dress brushing the dusty floor. This world has a shape. A path. A proper ending. The Crown Prince suffers, the villain dies, the empire falls, and from the ruins, a chosen heroine rises with the power to rebuild it. She smiled. That was supposed to be me. Adrian stared at her. In the novel, Evelina had not become empress by marrying Lucien in every ending. In some versions, Lucien died, and Evelina became the saintly survivor who guided the empire after tragedy. Readers had loved her resilience. But if she remembered the story, if she wanted the tragic route. You want Lucien to die, Adrian said. Evelina's eyes softened with false pity. He was always more useful as a martyr. Lucien's expression went utterly still. Adrian felt rage rise in him, so suddenly it almost frightened him. You killed Cedric to weaken him. I moved Cedric to where he belonged. Weak pieces leave the board early. Lucien's voice dropped. He was my brother. He was a chapter. The archive seemed to freeze around them. Lucien moved. It happened so fast that the second masked man barely had time to raise his weapon. Lucien crossed the distance in a blur of black and silver, his sword striking the man's blade aside. Steel rang through the archive. Evelina stepped back, calm again. Adrian saw her reach into her sleeve. Lucien, don't breathe. Lucien reacted instantly. He turned his face away just as Evelina threw a handful of pale gray powder into the air. Ashwake. The same poison used on the servant. The powder spread like ghostly smoke between the shelves. Adrian grabbed the heavy archive file and slammed it against the nearest candle stand, knocking the flame to the floor. Fire caught the edge of an old curtain, smoke rising thick and black. Lucien coughed once, then cursed. Adrian pulled his cloak over his mouth and rushed toward him. The second masked man lunged. Adrian ducked clumsily. A hand caught his waist and pulled him back. Lucien. Even while fighting, he had reached for Adrian first. You absolute idiot! Adrian snapped through the fabric covering his mouth. Lucien blocked another strike. You are the one who came alone. You followed me while half dead. I gave you an order. You are not my emperor yet. The words came out before Adrian could stop them. Lucien's eyes flicked to him. For one insane moment, in the middle of poison, fire and blades, Adrian thought Lucien might smile. Then the attacker charged again. This time Cashin burst through the doorway with 3 royal guards behind him. Your Highness! The archive exploded into motion. Guards clashed with masked men. Shelves shook. Papers scattered like frightened birds. Smoke thickened beneath the ceiling, making the moonlight blur. Evelina used the chaos perfectly. She slipped toward the rear exit. Adrian saw her. She's escaping. He ran after her. Lucien shouted his name, but Adrian did not stop.
The rear passage led down a spiral stairwell lit only by narrow slits of moonlight. Evelina moved quickly, her white dress flashing ahead like a ghost. Adrian followed, one hand on the wall to keep from slipping. "Who are you?" he shouted. Evelina laughed from below. "Someone who understood the ending before you did." The stairwell opened into the old portrait gallery. The gallery was long and dark, lined with paintings of dead royals, whose eyes seemed to follow Adrian as he ran. Rain tapped against the windows. Thunder rolled beyond the glass. Evelina stopped beneath a portrait of the first emperor. Adrian slowed, breathing hard. She was not running anymore. That was bad. Very bad. "You still don't understand," she said. "This world rejects changes. Every time you save someone, fate demands a replacement. Cedric died early because Lucien survived the first trap. The servant died because you exposed the lie. Someone always pays." Adrian's mouth went dry. Was that true? Or another manipulation? Evelina stepped closer. "You think you are saving him, but you are only moving death from one body to another." Adrian gripped the file tighter. "No. Yes." Her smile became gentle again, and somehow that was worse. "The Crown Prince dies before the first snow. That is the law of this story. If not by assassination, then poison. If not poison, then betrayal. If not betrayal." Her eyes flicked behind Adrian. "Then love." Adrian turned too late. A masked woman dropped from the balcony above, blade aimed for his back. Adrian froze. But the strike never landed. Lucien appeared between them. The blade cut across his side instead. Blood sprayed against the marble floor. Adrian screamed his name. Lucien staggered but did not fall. He drove his sword into the attacker's shoulder and forced her back, face white with pain. Evelina watched with satisfaction. "See," she whispered. "He will always choose you. That is how you kill him." Adrian's chest felt like it was being crushed. Lucien's breath was ragged. Blood dripped from his side, dark against his coat. He still stood between Adrian and danger, as if his body was a wall Adrian had the right to hide behind. Adrian hated it. He hated the story. He hated fate. He hated himself for wanting Lucien's protection, and fearing the cost of it. "Stop protecting me," Adrian said, voice shaking. Lucien did not look back. "No. I said stop. And I said no. You'll die." Lucien turned then. His blue eyes burned brighter than the lightning outside. "Then give me a reason to live." Adrian could not breathe. The words struck the deepest part of him, the part that still believed he was temporary. Borrowed. Disposable. A villain wearing a dead boy's name. Lucien looked at him not like a prince commanding a suspect, not like a reader pitying a doomed character, but like a man standing at the edge of ruin and asking Adrian to pull him back. Evelina's expression twisted. "How touching." She lifted a small silver whistle to her lips. Adrian's memories screamed. In the original novel, the palace hounds were not animals. They were assassins trained by the Empress Dowager, summoned by a whistle used only in emergencies. "Lucien." The whistle sounded. From the far end of the gallery, doors slammed open. More masked figures entered. Too many. Cassian and the guards were still upstairs. Lucien was injured. Adrian had no weapon. Evelina smiled. "Let us see how many deaths your love can delay." Adrian looked at Lucien's blood on the floor. Something inside him went cold. Not fear. Not panic. Decision. If the story wanted a villain, then fine. He would become one on his own terms. Adrian lifted the archive file. "Lucien," he said softly, "trust me." Lucien's eyes sharpened. Adrian stepped away from him and faced Evelina. "You said fate demands a replacement," Adrian said. "Then let's give it one." Evelina's smile faltered. Adrian turned toward the portrait of the first emperor and remembered another detail from the novel. Beneath this gallery was an old defense mechanism, built during a rebellion, triggered only by royal blood spilled on the imperial crest. Lucien's blood was already on the floor. Adrian moved fast. He grabbed Lucien's sword hand, ignoring his startled breath, and dragged the blade lightly across his own palm. Blood welled bright red. Then Adrian slammed his bleeding hand onto the crest carved beneath the portrait. For half a second, nothing happened. Evelina laughed. Then the entire gallery shook. Stone gears groaned beneath the floor. Iron shutters crashed down over the windows. Hidden walls split open with a thunderous roar. The masked assassins stopped. Lucien stared at Adrian. "What did you do?" Adrian smiled through the pain in his palm. "Changed the scene." From the walls, ancient defense chains shot out like black serpents, wrapping around the masked attackers' legs and arms. Screams filled the gallery. Blades clattered to the floor. Evelina stumbled back, shock breaking her perfect face. This was not supposed to happen. Adrian walked toward her, blood dripping from his hand. "No," he said. "I was not supposed to happen." For the first time, Evelina looked afraid of him. Really afraid. But her fear lasted only a second. She reached into her sleeve and threw something against the floor. A glass vial shattered. White smoke exploded through the gallery. Lucien grabbed Adrian's wrist and pulled him close. When the smoke cleared, Evelina was gone. The assassins were trapped. The archive file was still in Adrian's other hand. And Lucien was staring at Adrian, like the entire world had shifted beneath his feet. "You used your blood," he said. Adrian tried to laugh, but his knees nearly gave out. Lucien caught him instantly. "Just a little." "That was not little." "You are one to talk." Lucien's hand pressed against Adrian's bleeding palm, firm and warm. For a moment, the chaos faded. Their faces were close. Too close. Adrian could see the exhaustion in Lucien's eyes, the fear he had tried to hide, the anger, the relief. "You called it love," Lucien said quietly. Adrian's heart stopped. "I did not." "She did." "That does not mean." "Does it frighten you?" Adrian looked away. "Yes. More than death. Because death was simple. Death was written. But this feeling growing between them was unwritten, unpredictable, impossible to control. And Adrian had no idea whether it would save Lucien or destroy him. Before he could answer, Cashin rushed into the gallery with guards behind him. He took one look at the trapped assassins, Lucien's blood, Adrian's bleeding hand, and the destroyed walls. His face went blank. "I was gone for 10 minutes. Adrian gave him a weak smile. "A lot happened." Lucien exhaled once, almost a laugh, then winced. Cashin's expression hardened immediately. "Physician. Now." But before anyone could move, one of the trapped assassins began laughing. It was a woman, her mask cracked across one eye. "Too late," she rasped. Lucien turned. The assassin smiled through bloodied teeth. "The first snow has already been summoned." Adrian's blood ran cold. Outside the windows, thunder faded. The rain stopped. And in the middle of autumn, white flakes began falling from the black sky. Snow. Adrian looked at Lucien. Lucien looked back at him. The prophecy had not been avoided. It had arrived early. End of Part 6. Part 7. Snow fell over the palace like a curse made visible. It drifted past the shattered gallery windows, soft and silent, covering the autumn gardens in a pale white layer that should not have existed. Only an hour ago, rain had beaten against the glass. The air had smelled of wet stone and dying candles. Now winter had arrived overnight. No. Not winter. A warning. Adrian stood frozen beneath the portrait of the first emperor, Lucien's blood drying on his sleeve, and his own palm wrapped in a torn strip of cloth. Around them, ancient chains still held the masked assassins against the walls, their weapons scattered across the floor. No one spoke at first. Even Cashin, who always seemed ready with anger or orders, stared out the window in silence. Because everyone in that room understood what the snow meant. The prophecy had begun. Crown Prince Lucien Arkwright was destined to die before the first snow. And the first snow was falling now. Adrian turned to Lucien. The Crown Prince looked pale beneath the moonlight, but his face remained calm. Too calm. His black coat was torn at the side where the assassin's blade had cut him.
Blood darkened the fabric, spreading slowly despite the pressure of his hand. Adrian's heart twisted. "Sit down," he said. Lucien glanced at him. That sounded like an order. It was. Cassian stepped forward immediately. "For once, Lord Adrian is correct." Lucien gave his knight a dry look. "How comforting. My entire court has turned against me, and now so has my guard." "You are bleeding through your coat, your highness." "I noticed." Adrian grabbed Lucien's arm. "Then act like it matters." Lucien looked down at Adrian's hand on him. The anger in Adrian's voice faded into something more fragile. "Please," Adrian said quietly. That word changed everything. Lucien's resistance disappeared. He allowed Cassian and Adrian to guide him to a stone bench beneath the portrait gallery's cracked window. The physician arrived moments later, breathless and horrified, with 2 assistants carrying a medical case. When he saw the wound, his expression darkened. "You tore open the poison injury, reopened the shoulder wound, and gained a new cut." The physician looked at Lucien, as if scolding a reckless student, rather than the future emperor. "Your Highness, are you attempting to make my profession meaningless?" Lucien leaned back against the wall. "I am attempting to stay alive." "Then begin by not walking into assassination attempts." Adrian muttered. "I have been saying that." Lucien's gaze flicked to him. Despite everything, there was warmth in it. The physician cut away the ruined fabric and began treating the wounds. Lucien did not flinch, but Adrian saw the muscles in his jaw tighten. He stood beside him, unable to leave, unable to look away. Cassian questioned the captured assassins. Most refused to speak. One tried to bite something hidden in his tooth, but Cassian knocked him unconscious before he could swallow poison. The cracked-masked woman who had warned them about the snow only smiled. "The first snow falls," she whispered. "The prince dies. The villain burns. The false saint rises." Adrian stepped closer. Lucien immediately reached for him, but Adrian lifted a hand. "I'm fine." Lucien's eyes narrowed, clearly not believing him. Adrian looked down at the assassin. "Who summoned the snow?" The woman smiled wider. "The one who corrected the story. Evelina. She is more than that name." Adrian crouched in front of her, ignoring Cassian's warning look. "Then tell me who she really is." The woman's eyes glittered. A girl who read the ending and hated it. A soul who entered a dead child's body before the story began. A saint who decided kindness was only useful when people were weak enough to worship it. Adrian's breath stopped. So Evelina was like him. Not exactly. Worse. She had been here for years. She had prepared. She had built her mask, gathered her followers, learned the palace, and shaped the story long before Adrian woke up. He had entered the board late. She had been moving pieces since childhood. The assassin leaned closer as much as the chains allowed. "She has killed your ending again and again." Adrian frowned. "Again?" Lucien's voice came from behind him, low and tense. "Adrian." The assassin laughed softly. "You don't remember, do you? This is not the first time. The villain wakes. The villain tries to change fate. The prince reaches for him. The prince dies. The world resets. Only she remembers everything." Adrian's blood went cold. Resets. Multiple endings. Multiple failures. A story looping until Evelina won. His knees nearly weakened. No wonder she knew how to trap them. No wonder she had spoken as if Adrian's survival was a repeated mistake. Lucien pushed the physician's hand away and stood despite the man's protest. He came to Adrian's side. "Enough," Lucien said to the assassin. The woman smiled at him. "You always say that before you die." Adrian felt Lucien go still. Then the assassin's body jerked. Her eyes rolled back. The physician rushed forward, but it was too late. A black line spread beneath her skin like ink under glass. "She was poisoned too," the physician said grimly. "Delayed capsule, likely activated by pressure under the tongue." Cassian swore. Every witness died. Every answer cost blood. Adrian stepped back, his mind racing too fast. If Evelina remembered the previous loops, then she knew every attempt they might make. Every path. Every escape. Every alliance. That meant the story was not simply dangerous. It was rigged. Lucien touched Adrian's shoulder. "Look at me." Adrian did not want to. If he looked at Lucien now, he might break. "Adrian." Slowly, Adrian turned. Lucien's face was pale, his body wounded, but his eyes were steady. "Whatever she remembers," he said. "We are here now." Adrian laughed once, sharp and bitter. "That is not enough. It is all anyone has. You don't understand. She has done this before. She knows how you die. Then we will make a choice she has never seen." Adrian looked at him. Lucien's voice softened. "You said you were not supposed to happen." Adrian swallowed. "Then stop trying to beat fate by following its rules." Those words settled into Adrian, like a spark falling into dry wood. Stop following the rules. In every loop, maybe he had tried to save Lucien while remaining Adrian Vale, the villain. Maybe he had tried to prove innocence, expose Evelina, prevent the assassination, survive the prophecy. But what if the prophecy itself was bait? The prince dies before first snow. What counted as death? A body? A title? A role? Adrian's eyes widened. "Lucien," he whispered. "The prophecy says the crown prince dies." Lucien watched him carefully. "Yes. Not Lucien Arkwright." Cassian frowned. "What are you suggesting?" Adrian turned toward the window, watching snow cover the palace roofs. "The story needs the crown prince to die before the first snow. Evelina summoned the snow because she thinks it forces fate to collect you tonight." He looked back at Lucien. "Then stop being crown prince." The room went silent. Cassian stared at him. "That is treason." Lucien did not speak. Adrian continued quickly. "Not permanently. Publicly. Politically. If Lucien abdicates the title of crown prince before Evelina's final move, the prophecy loses its target." Cassian looked horrified. "The empire would fall into succession chaos. It already is. The Empress Dowager would seize power. Only if we do it blindly." Adrian faced Lucien. "Prince Cedric is dead. The court is divided. The Empress Dowager's faction is exposed but not destroyed. Evelina wants you trapped inside the role the story wrote for you." Lucien's gaze sharpened. Adrian stepped closer. "So leave the role." The physician looked between them, as if deciding whether he had wandered into a fever dream. Cassian's expression was grim. "Even if His Highness abdicates, the court may not accept it. And if he gives up the title, he gives up legal protection." Adrian's voice lowered. "Not if he transfers temporary royal authority to someone else." Cassian's eyes narrowed. "Who?" Adrian looked at the portrait above them. "The first emperor's bloodline law." Lucien understood first. His eyes widened slightly. Cassian frowned. "What bloodline law?" Lucien answered quietly. "In a succession emergency, royal authority may be temporarily transferred to a bonded regent chosen by the heir." Adrian's heart began to pound. The law had been mentioned once in the novel, buried in a political chapter most readers probably skimmed. A bonded regent was not necessarily a spouse, not necessarily a lover. It was an ancient imperial contract of absolute trust, used only during war or crisis. But the court would interpret it emotionally. They would see it as a declaration. A scandal. A bond between the crown prince and the accused villain. Cassian looked from Lucien to Adrian. "No." Lucien's gaze never left Adrian. "You realize what that would mean?" Adrian forced a smile. "That the court will hate me more? That you would become my political equal until the crisis ends? I have been accused of murder, hunted by assassins, threatened by a false heroine who remembers time loops, and abandoned by my father. Equality sounds refreshing." Lucien stepped closer. "That is not all." Adrian knew. Of course he knew. The bond required blood. A vow. A public acceptance. And once made, it could not be denied without destroying both reputations. Lucien's voice softened. They will say you bewitched me. They already do. They will say I chose you over the Empire. Adrian's smile faded. And did you? The question escaped before he could stop it. Lucien went very still. Cassian looked away, suddenly fascinated by the snow. The physician cleared his throat and pretended to examine medical tools. Lucien reached for Adrian's injured hand, careful not to hurt him. I chose the person who keeps standing beside me, when everyone else waits for me to fall. Adrian's breath caught. That is a dangerous answer, he whispered. Lucien's thumb brushed the edge of the bandage on Adrian's palm. So is yours. For a moment, the palace, the prophecy, Evelina, and death itself seemed far away. Then bells rang. Not chapel bells. War bells. Cassian rushed to the window. His face hardened. The northern gate. A guard burst into the gallery and dropped to one knee. Your Highness. The Empress Dowager has declared Lord Adrian a traitor. She claims he used forbidden magic to summon the snow and curse the palace. She has ordered his execution by dawn. Lucien's eyes turned deadly. The guard continued, voice shaking. And Lady Evelina has appeared before the court. She says she can save the Empire if your Highness surrenders Lord Adrian to her judgment. Adrian laughed softly. There it was. The final trap. Make the Empire fear him. Make Lucien choose between duty and Adrian. Force the tragedy. Lucien turned to Cassian. Gather the loyal guard. Cassian bowed. Yes, your Highness. Lucien looked at Adrian. No hesitation. No doubt. Will you do it? Adrian knew what he meant. The bonded regency. The breaking of the prophecy. The choice that might save Lucien or doom them both. His first life had ended in loneliness. His second had begun as a disposable villain. Every path told him to run, hide, survive alone. But Lucien was looking at him like he was not a pawn. Like he was the only person in the world whose answer mattered. Adrian held out his bleeding hand. Yes. Lucien took it. Outside, snow fell harder. The first snow had come for the Crown Prince. But by dawn, the Crown Prince would no longer exist. End of Part 7. Part 8. The old Imperial Chapel had not been open for a coronation in over 30 years. It stood beneath the eastern tower, hidden below the palace like a buried heart. Its walls were made of black stone veined with gold, and the ceiling arched so high that candlelight disappeared into darkness before it reached the top. Ancient emperors had once made blood vows here during wars, rebellions, and succession crises. Now snow gathered against the narrow windows outside. The first snow. The death snow. The prophecy's blade pressed against the throat of the night. Adrian stood at the center of the chapel with his bandaged hand held close to his chest, watching Lucien step before the altar. The Crown Prince looked impossibly pale beneath the torchlight, but his back was straight. His torn coat had been replaced with a formal black cloak, clasped at the throat by the imperial crest. He looked like a prince. He looked like a sacrifice. Adrian hated it. Cassian stood near the doors with the loyal royal guards. The physician waited nervously beside the altar, holding the ancient regency contract in shaking hands. Every person in the room understood that if this failed, Lucien would die before dawn, and Adrian would be dragged to the execution square as the villain who cursed the Empire. Lucien turned to him. Last chance, he said quietly. Adrian gave him a tired smile. You keep offering me exits after locking every door. I would open one if you asked. That was the worst part. Adrian believed him. Lucien would let him run. Even now, with his title, his life, and the Empire hanging by a thread, Lucien would let Adrian choose himself. But Adrian was done running from a story that had already killed him in every version Evelina remembered. He stepped closer. I am not leaving. Lucien's eyes softened. The physician cleared his throat. Your Highness, once the vow begins, it cannot be interrupted. Lucien nodded. Begin. The physician unfolded the contract. In a time of royal crisis, when bloodline succession is threatened, the chosen heir may surrender crown authority temporarily to a bonded regent. The bond requires blood, name, and mutual vow.
If accepted by imperial law, the title of Crown Prince shall sleep until the crisis ends.
Sleep. Not die. Adrian's heart pounded.
If the title slept before the prophecy struck, then perhaps fate would find no crown prince to kill. Or perhaps fate would punish them for tricking it. The physician placed a silver dagger on the altar. Lucien picked it up first. Adrian's stomach tightened as Lucien cut his palm without hesitation. Blood welled dark red against his skin. Then he offered the dagger to Adrian. Adrian took it. His hand trembled only once before he cut his own palm, reopening the wound from the gallery. Pain flashed up his arm, sharp and grounding. Lucien reached for him. Their bleeding palms met. The chapel seemed to hold its breath. The physician's voice echoed through the stone chamber. State your name. Lucien looked directly into Adrian's eyes. Lucien Arkwright, first prince of the empire, named crown prince by imperial blood.
The torches flickered. Adrian swallowed.
Adrian Vale, second son of House Vale.
The words felt strange.
Once, that name had been a death sentence. Now it was something he was choosing to keep.
The physician continued.
State your vow.
Lucien's fingers tightened around Adrian's.
I surrender the crown prince's authority into Adrian Vale's hands until the conspiracy against the throne is ended, the imperial bloodline is secured, and the false claimants are judged. A faint golden light began to burn beneath their joined hands.
Adrian's breath caught. Magic.
Not the dramatic magic of fairy tales, but something older.
Law made visible. Blood answering blood.
The physician looked at Adrian. State your vow.
Adrian looked at Lucien. So many answers crowded his throat.
I vow to survive. I vow to change the story. I vow not to let you die. But the chapel demanded truth, not performance.
Adrian spoke quietly.
I accept this authority not for power, not for revenge, and not for House Vale. I accept it to protect Lucien Arkwright, to expose the false saint, and to break the ending written for us.
The golden light flared.
Wind rushed through the sealed chapel. The candles bent sideways.
Cassian stepped forward, eyes wide.
The physician nearly dropped the contract. And above the altar, the imperial crest began to glow. For one impossible second, Adrian felt something vast turn its attention toward him.
Not Evelina. Not fate.
The story itself. It pressed against his mind like a cold hand, searching for the villain it expected to find.
Cruel. Selfish. Disposable. Doomed.
Adrian's breath shook. Images flashed behind his eyes. Lucien dying in snow. Adrian executed at dawn. Evelina crowned in white. The empire burning. Then another image. Lucien reaching for him in the chapel. Lucien shielding him in the tunnel. Lucien tearing Duke Vale's letter in half. Lucien asking him for a reason to live. Adrian tightened his grip.
No, he whispered.
The golden light shattered outward. The chapel doors burst open. A guard rushed in, breathless. Your Highness. The Empress Dowager's faction is moving toward the execution square. Lady Evelina has gathered the court. They are declaring Lord Adrian guilty in public. Lucien and Adrian turned together. The physician stared at them, pale with awe. The contract accepted, he whispered. Cassian looked at Lucien. Your Highness. Lucien touched the imperial crest at his throat. It had gone dull. Then he looked at Adrian. A faint smile curved his mouth. Not Your Highness.
Adrian's pulse thundered.
The Crown Prince title had fallen asleep. For now, Lucien was only Lucien. And Adrian. Adrian felt the weight of imperial authority settle onto his shoulders like a cloak made of fire. He turned to the guards. Open the square. Cassian bowed. Not to Lucien. To Adrian. Yes, Regent Vale. The execution square was filled with people by the time Adrian arrived. Snow fell harder now, turning the torches into blurred orange stars. Nobles stood beneath canopies. Soldiers lined the stone steps. Commoners whispered beyond the gates, frightened by rumors of curses, murder, and royal betrayal. At the center of the square stood Lady Evelina. She wore white, of course. Always white. Beside her sat the Empress Dowager on a raised chair, her black mourning veil covering a face that had never truly grieved Cedric at all. Marquis Belrose stood near them with a scroll in hand, ready to read Adrian's sentence. Duke Vale was there too. Adrian saw his father's eyes widen when he entered not in chains, but beside Lucien, with Cassian and the royal guards behind him. Belrose recovered first. "Seize him!" he shouted. "The traitor dares show himself." No one moved, because the guards had seen the crest burning on Adrian's cloak. Imperial authority. Temporary, but undeniable. Evelina's face changed. Only slightly. But Adrian saw the shock. She had not seen this ending before. Good. Adrian walked to the center of the square. Lucien followed at his side, pale but steady, one hand near his sword. The Empress Dowager rose slowly. "What trick is this?" Adrian looked at her. "No trick. Law." Belrose's mouth opened, but Cassian stepped forward and struck the scroll from his hand. "The regency contract was accepted by imperial bloodline law," Cassian announced. "Until the crisis ends, Lord Adrian Vale holds royal authority." The square erupted. Shouts. Gasps. Disbelief. Duke Vale looked as if he had swallowed poison. Evelina stared at Adrian with pure hatred. "You," she whispered. Adrian turned to her. "Yes," he said. "Me." For the first time, he did not feel like the disposable villain. He felt like the person standing between the story and the man it wanted to destroy. Evelina stepped forward, raising her voice for the crowd. "Do not be deceived. He has bewitched the prince. He summoned the snow. He murdered Prince Cedric and now hides behind stolen authority." Adrian let her speak. He let the crowd hear the fear beneath her beauty. Then he lifted the archive file. "The real Lady Evelina Armand died 12 years ago." The square went silent. Evelina's expression froze. Adrian opened the file and handed it to the nearest judge. "Death certificate. Witness records. Succession documents. The woman before you is not Lady Evelina Armand." The judge read with trembling hands. The Empress Dowager's face tightened. Belrose stepped back. Adrian continued. "Prince Cedric was drugged before he was killed. The dagger was planted in my room. The witness who accused me was threatened through his sister, then poisoned with ashwake. We recovered the poison residue from the sealed note." The physician stepped forward, holding the evidence. Murmurs spread like fire. Evelina smiled suddenly. It was beautiful. It was terrible. "And what of it?" she asked softly. The square quieted again. Her mask fell completely. No more tears. No more trembling innocence. Only the cold, furious soul beneath. "You think evidence matters? You think truth wins because you announce it in front of frightened people?" She laughed. "I have lived this ending more times than you can imagine. Nobles believe what protects them. Soldiers obey whoever feeds them. Crowds worship whoever looks pure enough to save them." Her eyes moved to Lucien. "And he dies every time." Lucien stepped forward. "Not tonight." Evelina's smile sharpened. "You are not even Crown Prince anymore." "No," Lucien said. He looked at Adrian. His voice softened, but everyone heard it. "I am something far more dangerous." Adrian's heart stopped. Lucien turned back to Evelina. "I am a man who has chosen." Evelina's face twisted with rage. She lifted both hands. The snow above the square began to spin. Screams broke out as white flakes turned sharp as glass, swirling in a deadly circle around the platform. Guards raised shields. Nobles fled. The Empress Dowager stumbled back, suddenly afraid of the monster she had helped raise. Adrian understood then. Evelina had not summoned winter through nature. She had bound the prophecy itself to her will. If the Crown Prince existed, the snow killed him. But Lucien had stepped out of the title. So the snow turned toward the next strongest target. Adrian. The regent. The villain who stole the ending. Lucien saw it at the same moment. "Adrian." The glass-like snow rushed toward him. Lucien moved to shield him again, but Adrian grabbed his wrist. "No.
Lucien's eyes widened. Adrian. You told me to stop following the rules. Adrian stepped in front of him. The snow struck. Pain exploded across his skin, but the imperial crest on his cloak burned gold. The bonded vow answered the attack, light spreading from Adrian's chest to Lucien's hand, where their fingers remained locked. Not Lucien alone. Not Adrian alone. Together. Evelina screamed. This is not how it goes. Adrian lifted his bleeding hand. You are right. The golden light surged outward, swallowing the snowstorm. The square vanished in brightness. For a moment, Adrian saw every failed ending Evelina had forced onto this world. Lucien dying alone, Adrian dying nameless, Cedric dying afraid, the Empire kneeling to a false saint. Then he saw this ending. Unwritten. Unowned. Free. The light shattered the snow. Evelina collapsed to her knees. The white dress she loved so much was stained with ash. Her magic broke, and with it, the fear holding the crowd silent. The captured assassins confessed before dawn. Marquis Belrose was arrested after records proved his connection to the Empress Dowager's faction. The Empress Dowager was stripped of authority, and confined under guard pending trial. Duke Vale tried to approach Adrian once the court shifted in his favor. Adrian did not let him speak. You surrendered me when I was useful to blame, Adrian said calmly. Do not reach for me now that I am useful to praise. Then he turned away. For the first time in both his lives, walking away from a family that never loved him did not feel like losing. It felt like breathing. 3 days later, the snow melted. Prince Cedric was buried with honor, and Lucien stood at his grave in silence. Adrian remained beside him, not touching him, not speaking, simply present. After a long while, Lucien said, "He deserved more time." Adrian nodded. "Yes. Will the story punish us for changing it?" Adrian looked at the clear sky. "I don't know." Lucien turned to him. "Are you afraid?" Adrian thought about lying. Then he smiled faintly. "Yes." Lucien stepped closer. "So am I." Somehow, that made Adrian feel less alone. Weeks passed. The regency ended once the conspiracy trials concluded. Lucien reclaimed his title, but something had changed. The court no longer looked at Adrian as a disposable son of House Vale. They looked at him as the man fate had failed to erase. Some hated him. Some feared him. Some whispered that the Crown Prince trusted him too deeply. They were right. One evening, Adrian found Lucien alone on the palace balcony, watching the sunset spill gold across the capital. "You sent for me?" Adrian asked. Lucien turned. "No." Adrian blinked. "Then why did Cassian say?" The balcony doors closed behind him. Cassian, traitor that he was, had locked them outside together. Adrian stared at the doors. Lucien looked almost amused. "I may have mentioned that you avoid conversations when they become personal." Adrian slowly turned back. "You conspired with your knight to trap me on a balcony?" "Yes." "That is very royal of you." "I thought so." Adrian tried not to smile. Lucien stepped closer. No court watched them now. No prophecy hovered overhead. No false heroine waited in white. Only the evening wind and the dangerous quiet between two people who had survived what was written for them. Lucien's voice softened. "You once said you were not my ally." Adrian remembered. The sword at his throat. The fear. The beginning. "I was trying to be convincing." "You failed." Adrian laughed softly. Lucien reached for his hand. This time, there was no blood vow. No magic. No law. Just a choice. "Stay," Lucien said. Adrian's heart ached. Not from fear this time. From wanting. "As your regent?" he asked. "No." "As your advisor?" "No." Adrian looked up. Lucien's eyes held his, steady and unguarded. "As the person I choose when no story is choosing for me." Adrian forgot how to breathe. All his life, across two worlds, he had believed love was something that belonged to other people. Main characters. Heroes. People written to be wanted. Not disposable villains.
Not replacements. Not souls who arrived late and ruined the plot. But Lucien was standing before him, hand extended, asking him to stay not because fate demanded it, but because he wanted him there. Adrian placed his hand in Lucien's. "Yes," he whispered. Lucien smiled then. A real smile. Small, rare, devastating. And Adrian realized that this was the ending Evelina had never understood. Not the prince surviving. Not the villain winning. Not the false saint falling. This ending mattered because it was chosen. The story had tried to make Adrian Vale disposable. Lucien had refused. And eventually so had Adrian. End of Part 8. And that was the end of Adrian and Lucien's story. If you enjoyed this emotional BL story full of reincarnation, betrayal, royal danger, and forbidden love, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next story. Also, tell me in the comments, what was your favorite moment between Adrian and Lucien? Did you expect Evelina's true identity, or did the twist surprise you? Your comments help me know what kind of BL stories you want to see next. Thank you so much for watching until the end, and I'll see you in the next story.